the House of Judah. My name is Daniel Vallis and welcome to our channel. A lot going on right now, a lot of celestial signs coming together, and in our last video we talked about the sign of Jonas and then how there's a lot of reminders with the celestial signs and the constellations at this time too as well. Strong reminders of those same lessons. We also see the Shiloh sign, the sign of the Son of Man, the peace and safety signs down in geopolitical events that we've seen too as well. There is a lot that demands our attention, and we are watching a lot, and we also are watching how we are running out of time as well. We are coming up on multiple marker events. Now in our last video we talked about the atonement goat reminder, and I made a mention about where the sun would be according to Jupiter opposition, and I have removed that because just in more contemplation and thought, that's not important because it's not relevant to that particular reminder. And it actually got me thinking more about what makes Jupiter opposition, declaring the borders, which was well known all the way back to the time of Abraham and Job and all them. What makes that particular to just the Shiloh sign? Why does it not apply to other celestial signs and the reminders that we're looking at now? So that's what we're going to look at today, of more about the Shiloh sign, but as we do so, we learn more about the tapestry of redemption, and we learn more about how orderly the heavens declare the glory of God. We've talked about before in Numbers chapter 2, how when the Israelites were going through the wilderness and they made the tabernacle of the congregation, that the Lord gave instructions of how the different tribes should camp around the tabernacle. Whenever they set up camp, the tribes had specific locations where they were supposed to set up at. It was not just set up your tent willy-nilly wherever you want. God gave them a specific order of where they should pitch their tribe's camp around the tabernacle. And we talked about how verse 3, and on the east side toward the rising of the sun shall they of the standard of the camp of Judah pitch throughout their armies. And God gave the instruction. This is God's instruction here, telling them all the different tribes according to the ensign of their father's house, the sign and symbol associated with their tribe that's going to be on their banner, that's going to be on their standard. Set those standards up in the different locations around the tabernacle where they're going to be set up at, where the different tribes are going to be divided out to. And notice how he says in verse 2, far off about the tabernacle of the congregation shall they pitch. The tribes were not going to be camped right up next to the tabernacle. There was going to be far off. There was going to be a large distance between all the people where they were camped, and then in the middle, the tabernacle. There was going to be a lot of breathing room, and just so they weren't so close to the holy things, so they did not get too used to it just through common acquaintance. And a lot of the rabbis say they were probably about a half a mile away. But take note, and this is what we're going to look at today, they were divided out according to the tribes, and then each tribe, their area, their division, their encampment was marked by the standard that had their ensign, their symbol of their father's house. And keep in mind, all the tribes of Israel, their father's house were one of the 12 of Jacob's sons. And we've been particularly looking at the camp of Judah. Judah had its own particular camp area where Judah was to set up their standard and where Judah would camp. All those of Judah would camp in that spot. And particularly they were on the east side toward the rising of the sun, which is interesting just when we consider the celestial signs we're looking at right now with Jupiter and the lion. Right now, where is it? It's rising in the morning in the east. So it's amazing to see a lot of parallels when we look toward the rising of the sun. That direction, before dawn, before it rises, you would see right now Jupiter as the morning star. Right now Jupiter is the morning star, Venus is the evening star. But all of them were camped around the tabernacle with their own specific encampments. And when you do reading and study on it, you'll find there's a variety of different views on exactly how the camps were set out. Was it in a square? Was it in a cross shape? Was it in a circle shape? Exactly how they were camped around the tabernacle. There's dispute about that. But there is a lot that we do know that Scripture tells us, particularly Numbers chapter 2, and this is what we're going to look at today. The tabernacle was set up so that it was facing east. And so when we just put in a compass here, north, south, east, west, the tabernacle faced east. And the instructions that God gave them, every man of the children of Israel shall pitch by his own standard with the ensign of their father's house, far off about the tabernacle of the congregation shall they pitch. So shall they set forward every man in his place by their standards. So they pitched by their standards, and so they set forward every one after their families according to the house of their fathers. And so he gave instructions. When you camp, you're going to be divided out according to the house of your fathers. And when you march, when you go forward, you're also going to be marching in rank according to the house of your fathers. All the tribes were divided by their different houses. And God gave specific instructions that whether you're camping or whether you're marching, you have your ranks that you should be in. And you know which one is yours because you will look for the standard that has the ensign of your father's house on it. And so he gave specific instructions. In verse 3, on the east side, toward the rising of the sun, shall they of the standard of the camp of Judah pitch. So we know exactly where Judah went. It was straight east of the tabernacle. And also with Judah, though, was Zebulun and Issachar with their standards. And we're going to look at some of the more prevalent symbols and emblems that are associated with the tribes. There have been some variations with them over the years, but we're going to show some of the ones that are most associated with them and based on the blessing that Jacob gave those 12 sons later on toward the end of his life. But God gave specific instructions of where the leaders of different groups were going to go. You see, he was going to divide those 12 tribes into groups of 4. And those different 4 groups were going to be placed at the cardinal directions in relation to the tabernacle. In each of those groups, one tribe was going to be the leader of that group. You could even use the word brigade in a sense because they marched as a brigade. So Judah was leading the charge, and the discussion and ambiguity is which side Zebulun and Issachar was on. Were they next to it? Were they behind it? That's the only thing in dispute. But we know there were groups there with them and that Judah was on the east side and that those two were right near him somewhere. And God gave specific instructions. When they marched forward, Judah would go first. Judah's brigade, which included the group of Zebulun and Issachar. And so that's how he divided them. The 12 would be distinctly camped, but then it'd also be divided into 4 brigades. Judah leading the charge whenever they marched. Judah would go forth, and Judah, the lion, would lead the way. But then the second brigade, if you will, on the south side shall be the standard of the camp of Reuben. And Reuben's often associated with water or a man, based on different stories, and there's a lot of rabbinical information about these of why they lean towards certain symbology with their particular father's house, so we're not going to get into that here. But they had their standard, and Reuben would be the leader of the southern brigade. And then included with that was Gad and Simeon, and they were second in rank. Judah's brigade would march forth first, and then Reuben's brigade would march after them. And Levi was camped in the middle around the tabernacle, and they were ranked number 3. They would follow Reuben. They'd be marching in the middle. And then on the west side shall be the standard of the camp of Ephraim. And they're often associated with an ox because of a metaphor associated with Joseph, their father. And in Ephraim's brigade are Manasseh and Benjamin. And Ephraim's brigade would be ranked number 4. And then the standard of the camp of Dan shall be on the north side. And Dan has a lot of variation of the different symbols associated with it. Sometimes it's a horse. A lot of times, even today, the more traditional symbol is the serpent. And somewhat of a modern symbol is the scale, because Dan is the judge. But then you also see an eagle. And this is interesting because even the rabbis teach that these particular standards at these 4 cardinal directions, north, east, south, and west, are a lion, a man, an ox, and an eagle, which very strongly resembles the living creatures that Ezekiel saw when he had his vision. The creatures that had 4 faces, the face of a man and the face of a lion on the right side, and they 4 had the face of an ox on the left side, and they 4 also had the face of an eagle. So it's very interesting, a lot of the parallels which seem that the order of the camp was resembling things in the heavens. And the rabbis and the Hebrew people noticed this and made this connection early on. But with Dan, there was also Asher and Naphtali, and they would bring up the rear with the 5th rank. So notice God is the one who divided them out. He told them where they'd be camping, and they would be all divided equally among the different tribes according to the house of their fathers. Everybody knew where Judah was, everybody knew where Reuben was, everybody knew where Ephraim was, everybody knew where Dan was. Everybody knew where their tribe was. And so keep this in mind, they camped in order and they marched in order, all according to the house of their fathers. Who was the son of Jacob, who was the father of their tribe and of their particular lineage? Judah led the way with the 1st rank, Reuben with the 2nd rank, Levi in the middle, Ephraim with the 4th, but the 3rd brigade, and then Dan brought up the rear. We had talked about Jacob and Israel when he heard Joseph's dream. And this is very important because the Bible early on equates the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 sons of Israel, with the celestial heavens, with the stars, and tells us specifically that we should equate the 2 together. And Joseph's dream is very interesting because it has the 12 stars, but it also included the sun and the moon. And Joseph said, "Behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me." And he told it to his father and to his brethren. And his father rebuked him and said unto him, "What is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee through the earth?" And his brethren envied him, but his father observed the saying. Now this is very important because did Joseph explain the dream? No. Jacob explained the dream to Joseph. Jacob instantly understood the meaning of what Joseph's dream was. We got to keep this in mind. Joseph, he knew what was in the dream, but Jacob, who would later give the Shiloh prophecy and all the blessings on the tribes, he knew full well the correlation between his sons and the stars, particularly the 12 stars, Joseph being the 12th one. Jacob is the one who identified and explained the dream to Joseph. Jacob knew the sun represented him. He knew the moon represented Joseph's mother. And then the 11 stars plus Joseph's star, that represented his 12 sons. Jacob explained it because he knew it. And when we think of the 12 constellations that travel along the ecliptic is where the sun and the moon travel along. The sun and the moon travel through all these 12 constellations, these 12 groupings of stars. Jacob knew the picture that Joseph dreamed, and he knew the importance and the meaning of what it signified. And when we consider the correlation we've already seen with how God had the 12 tribes, the 12 houses of Jacob, Israel, how he divided them up, and so they pitched by their standards, and so they set forward, everyone after their families, according to the house of their fathers. The division was done according to the house of their fathers, and we've already seen the Hebrew understanding and the correlation between celestial creatures and those in the heavens as well. With this particular division, even into 4, which relates to the equinoxes and the solstices as well. There's a lot of patterns in how these 2 go together and represent each other. And our understanding of the celestial signs grows deeper the more we understand the orderliness of God's creation and the orderliness that he exhibits, particularly in his dealings with the 12 tribes and the prophecies and the context and individuals involved in it. And it also deepens our understanding of what their understanding of it was when they were looking at the Shiloh prophecy as well. Isaiah 40:26, "Lift up your eyes on high, and behold who hath created these things, that bringeth out their host by number." Just like an army, just like a general marshals his troops by ranks, and he brings them forth by brigades, just like a general brings forth his hosts by their number, so God brings forth the stars by their number, by their rank. Now, does this sound familiar? Yes, because this is exactly what he told the children of Israel. You are going to go forth, you are going to march, you are going to camp by your number, by your rank. The children of Israel went forth like an army. And even God makes the comparison of the heavens are done in the exact same manner. When we look at the 12 constellations, we mentioned this before, but they're not equally scattered out, and some are way bigger than the others, and even some overlap. For example, with Capricornus and Aquarius here, there's overlap here. So you can't just divide it based on the stars, because it's totally uneven. Some are really big, some are really small. So what was done, even way back from the very beginning of time, was they just divided it equally. It's a whole lot easier. Just divide it by 12 into the 12 different areas of the heavens that would become associated with the different stars, the different constellations along that line. Just divide it by 12, makes it easy to keep track, and that's what they did. And you'll notice when you do that, though it won't line up sometimes in some places with the stars in that area. For example, Leo won't exactly be there right on it. Cancer might not exactly be right with Cancer. But no matter how you spin the wheel, you'll always have some that are in odd places, just because they're unequally spread out along the ecliptic. So no matter where you divide it, as long as you divide it by 12, you'll have equal divisions, but they'll be close to their corresponding stars and constellations. And they'll be able to just keep track of which one goes with what at that particular time. And with precession 2 and Jupiter's retrograde, we saw that before, it'll slowly creep along in the sky over time as well. But dividing it into 12 was a very ancient concept, and even Jacob understood full well that the 12 stars represented the 12 suns, and particularly the stars along the ecliptic, and is very common back then, the Chaldean way to divide it equally. And the Bible tells us in the book of Job, Job 9:9, that the heavens are divided into chambers. This is a very ancient concept. Job is the oldest book in the Bible. He was contemporary with the time of Abraham. And that's before the time of Jacob, Israel, and Joseph. And of course, Abraham would have passed that knowledge down to Jacob as well, too. But the 12 stars are divided among the 12 sons of Jacob, just like the encampment of the children of Israel, how they were equally divided around the tabernacle in the heavens. It was also understood that it was equally divided among the 12 sons into the 12 chambers, and that's what the Bible calls, and reckons them and likens them to tabernacles in the heavens, to rooms in the heavens. They have their own room, their own area, their own chamber. And even other cultures, such as the Chinese, they refer to them as mansions in the sky. So chambers, house, mansions, whatever you want to call it, if it's still the same concept of dividing the heavens along the ecliptic into different groups and divisions. And so this is what we're looking at, is the house of Jacob, the chamber of Jacob, but also where pattern-wise Judah would be camped at. Bullinger's book on the heavens, The Witness and the Stars, is a great book, and this is his suggested correlation of the tribes to the constellations divided out. And remember that Ephraim and Manasseh are sons of Joseph. And sometimes in listings in Scripture, you'll see the listings done different ways, interchanging them. Like when they are camped around the tabernacle, Levi is in the middle, so they bring in and shuffle things around and use one of those two instead of Joseph. So the order changes up every now and then, but for the heavens, the principal 12 sons, since Joseph was represented in the dream there, that's what's represented there. And Bullinger talks a lot more about it, and Lord willing, we'll talk more about it in future videos, more specifically on some of these. But the fact that the heavens, the chambers, the 12 chambers are divided among the 12 sons of Jacob, which means that Judah, the one we've been focusing on particularly, has his own chamber, and correlating it to the encampment, they would have their own area where they would be camped at. And just like Judah, whenever they marched forward, the standard bearer carried and set the border. Wherever they set that standard with their ensign on it, that area was where Judah camped. That was Judah's house area where they camped. And so we see that same manner displayed in the heavens with Jupiter, with its retrograde motion, and with opposition. Remember, with Jupiter's retrograde motion that makes around the ecliptic, the amount of time it takes equally divides it into 12 portions. And then Jupiter at opposition is essentially the standard bearer placing it in its place. And then while it's in its encampment, so to speak, it's marching along with its standard in Judah's area, in Judah's chamber. So this is what we saw. Jupiter at opposition is basically planting the standard there and saying, okay, Judah, you are camped here. This is your encampment here. And so we've been tracking and watching Jupiter as it's been traveling in the time frame of Judah, the house of Judah, the chamber of Judah in the heavens. And right now the standard bearer is getting ready to come around, but at that point in April 7th, that's when he's going to pick up and plant the standard for the next chamber in the next house. Jupiter is the standard bearer that goes along and plants them. He's the role of the lawgiver. He determines the boundaries. And so right now, he's planted Judah, still in Judah, and this is the house, the camp of Judah that we are watching. And this is important for prophecy when we understand the Shiloh sign. Genesis 49:10, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. There's multiple parts to this, but the principal condition is the first part. The scepter shall not depart from Judah. And so in order to understand what the scepter is not going to be departing from, we have to understand what is Judah. Does it say the scepter shall not depart from the lion? No. It says it's not going to depart from Judah. And what would the Hebrew people and what would Jacob and Joseph associate with Judah? His tribe, the house of Judah. His area, his encampment, the area, the division for Judah. The scepter is not going to depart from that house, that lineage, that area, that division, that chamber, the one that is associated with Judah. The second part, though, nor a lawgiver from between his feet. That is talking about his lineage, his offspring, the generations that would come from Judah, who would live and be considered in the house of Judah, who would be in the tribe of Judah. Judah would be their father. The term from between his feet is referring to his DNA, his offspring, his lineage. And that is within the context of Judah, the house of Judah. That forms the house of Judah. And so another thing we have to keep in mind is a celestial sign was only prophesied for the scepter. A lot of people like to get caught up on the lawgiver aspect, but that is not a celestial sign. The Bible only gives a celestial sign for the first part, just for the scepter, the Sceptre Star. This is the only thing that the wise men would be looking for, is the scepter. They weren't looking for a lawgiver in the heavens. They knew that would be evident in a earthly manifestation. There would be some rulership on the earth that would be a descendant of Judah, that would be holding that scepter, that would be the lawgiver. That would be down on the earth, but in the celestial heavens was where the Sceptre Star would be. So the Shiloh sign, when it was first fulfilled, there was a celestial component and an earthly component. The Sanhedrin was holding the authority and the scepter role at the time Christ was born. And so the wise men weren't looking for a lawgiver in the heavens or part of the sign. No, they were only looking for the celestial sign that represented the scepter. And it should catch our attention that the book of Numbers is what tells us where the different tribes should camp around the tabernacle and how they should be divided up, and how Judah is going to be on the east toward the rising of the sun, and Judah has their particular house. They have their particular encampment. They have their particular area where all those of Judah of that particular house would camp at. This is found in the book of Numbers, which is also the exact same book that records what the Sceptre Star sign is going to be, coming from the line of Judah prophesied by Jacob. The same book that tells us how they're divided also tells us of the Sceptre Star that's going to be coming from the line of Judah, who is a son of Jacob. And so the more we study Scripture, we see examples and patterns of how the tribes are divided equally and divided by standard and by house. And in the same book, we are also given correlation and understanding about the prophetic star and how we should view that, understanding how God divided out the houses and how they even understood and knew they were divided out. We understand the Shiloh prophecy by studying more the perspective of the tribes and how they were divided. How the scepter shall not depart from Judah. What does that mean? The house, the lineage, the offspring, the compilation of Judah, which is summarized by the house of Judah. The wise men only saw the prophesied star, the scepter. That's the only sign that they were looking for, because the other part was going to be fulfilled down on earth at the same time. So when we look at this Shiloh sign, we are looking at the first part as the celestial sign. That's really the only thing we're looking at. The scepter shall not depart from Judah. This gives us an idea of the time frame, because the next part is not part of the prophetic celestial sign. And since we were looking for him the second time, we already know this was fulfilled physically once. Christ the Redeemer was already born. We're not looking for that part again. And we know that he now holds the scepter, and in heaven he holds the scepter too. So he's not going to be born again. He's not going to depart ever from between his feet, which picture-wise would mean he would die and pass that off to somebody else. No, he's not going to do that. So we know that middle portion has been fulfilled forever. He's going to rule and reign forever too. So now that we are looking for him a second time, the only portion that we're looking at is the same sign, which prophetically we're told is a star sign, a celestial sign, and that's only for the scepter. The scepter shall not depart from Judah until Shiloh come. Expect Shiloh to come while the scepter is still symbolically, picture-wise, in what represents Judah. And this is why we are expecting Shiloh to come while the scepter is in Judah. What represents Judah? His house, his chamber. And since Christ ascended up to the heavens, that's where we're looking for this sign in the heavens. Just like the first time. That's where the scepter was the first time. And we've been looking at Jupiter, the king planet. And in Hebrew it means justice and righteousness. And you see this picture a lot throughout Scripture of the king who will rule in righteousness. His throne will be established in righteousness. You will see multiple times the idea of the Redeemer and Christ's throne established in righteousness. He will rule in righteousness. This is what Jupiter to the Hebrew people means and represents to them even. And just an FYI, even from an astronomical perspective, why is Jupiter called the king planet? Jupiter is the third brightest star in the night sky. Venus is the second brightest after the moon and the sun. But Jupiter, though, stays out during the night longer than Venus does. It actually stays out longer and it rides higher in the night sky. So it's seen a lot more, so it actually dominates the night sky more than Venus. Even though Jupiter is the third brightest, it dominates the sky more than Venus, so that's why Jupiter is the king planet. That's just a little astronomy FYI. But Jupiter, as the king planet, represents the scepter, and a scepter represents the king and his royalty and his authority, and how the king has multiple dual roles of lawgiver and judge. He determines boundaries, he makes laws, he makes decrees. And we see these different aspects tied to Jupiter. Jupiter is the scepter. We've talked about the shepherd's crook idea of the scepter, how the ancients viewed it a lot, especially the shepherd king concept. But then how the scepter is equated to the king. It represents the royal authority. But within that, the lawgiver and the judge, those are really authorities and roles. And you can have a symbolic scepter, so to speak, and have those authority and roles without even being a king. And just some examples, Joseph, he was not Pharaoh. He was very, very close to being a Pharaoh, though, but he was having the authority and the role of a lawgiver. He made laws, he made decrees, and he was a judge, too. David was the first fulfillment of a king from the line of Judah. So he had the actual royalty and the royal scepter, and he was also the lawgiver. and a judge. It's what he served as the king. He was the chief judge in his kingdom. And then also later on, around the time of Christ, the Sanhedrin had the symbolic scepter. They had the authority. They were the lawgiver and the judge, holding that place until the Redeemer came, and at his birth he assumed the kingship role. He assumed the scepter then. And so we know Christ has already fulfilled this. He's been born. He took up the scepter, and he has those authority. He is the lawgiver, and he's never going to depart ever. He's never going to pass that off to anybody else. So again, the only part that we're looking for, the only part that's going to be rehearsed a second time is going to be the celestial sign part that deals with the scepter. We see the roles tied with Jupiter, how Jupiter acts as it goes along the ecliptic. It acts like the lawgiver. It declares boundaries. It measures out the territory. So we can see the roles of a lawgiver echoed in the scepter, how it moves through the heavens. We could see that role there. But we're not looking necessarily for a lawgiver celestial sign, although we understand its role when we understand the scepter and what it represents. And so we've been looking at Jupiter, and particularly it caught our attention as this scepter associated with royalty, especially when it caught our attention right around Regulus, associated with the heart of the lion, also associated with royalty too as well. And it caught our attention when it was at opposition, and the Lord brought our attention leading up to it with the different events of the Star of Bethlehem reminders, bringing us right to the doorstep of the sign of Shiloh starting. That's when it really started, when the lawgiver, the standard bearer, declared, okay, now we're starting the house of Judah. And started it right at the feet of the lion too. Again, not necessarily fulfilling prophecy. That's not a prophetic celestial sign, but it reminded us of the story and of the prophecy, helping explain what are we looking at. We were looking at the celestial sign and we didn't know what we were looking at the time. We've learned a lot since then, but we took note of, okay, where is this taking place? What's going on here? What's the choreography here? And we've been learning more about it as we study it more of where it took place. And we saw and we have learned the role of the lawgiver with Jupiter at opposition at that place where it declared the camp of Judah, where the house of Judah was camped, so to speak, in the heavens, the area where Judah is going to be, and where it's going to be for 13 months from that point. The scepter is going to be traveling in that area, and then that story also leads into the next celestial sign, which rehearses how he came the first time, how the lawgiver was born and came from between his feet, from the lineage of Judah, and assumed the scepter at that point, but then also it rehearses how the scepter ascended to the heavens, and that's why we're looking in the heavens for it now, because that's where it is. We're awaiting him to come a second time. And by studying the house of Judah, and studying the heavenly correlation to the tribes, and how it's all ordered by God, the orderliness and the precision, the design, the choreography is incredible. And the more we study it, the more we understand a lot more clicks of what we saw before. We are getting more understanding of what we did see. And we are seeing deeper into the depths of our redemption and what has led to Shiloh the Redeemer, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So, in summary, we are looking in the house, the chamber of Judah, with boundaries marked out by the lawgiver for the celestial scepter star, since the scepter is now ascended back into heaven. We are looking in the house of Judah. Now we have notes from today's presentation. You can find these in the Shiloh booklet in the back section in the appendix area. Definitely download it and study it. It's incredible to see how the 12 stars equally divided among the 12 sons of Jacob, the 12 chambers, when we study the camp divisions and everything. It paints an incredible picture of the orderliness of our Creator and the story that the heavens declare. So much telling us about the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So definitely download the Shiloh booklet. The link is in the description box. And also keep me in prayer, Lord willing. I am already working on making a 3rd edition of this where we will tie in a lot of this information, taking it from the appendix area and putting it more into the text to make it a lot more understandable, especially for those new on the journey as well. So definitely keep that project in prayer. We are at an incredible time right now. The sign of the Son of Man is rehearsing an incredible story, the Shiloh sign, going on, watching the scepter in the house of Judah. With all the peace and safety warnings, the days of Noah and Lot, so many signs of our redemption, so many reminders of our redemption. We're in a time to expect the bridegroom, our beloved. We got reminders of judgment even and sudden destruction. An incredible choreography and pageantry in the heavens, and prophetic events and geopolitical events. We have no reason not to be watching, no reason not to be looking up and expecting our Redeemer. And the more we study our Redeemer and how he came and the events that led to him fulfilling prophecy and the whole background story behind it all, the more we understand the celestial heavens. We understand the story that's being declared. The more we look at the heavens and the more we look into God's Word, we'll have a deeper understanding of both aspects of it. Isaiah 40:26. Lift up your eyes on high, and behold who hath created these things, that bringeth out their host by number. He calleth them all by names by the greatness of his might, for that he is strong in power, not one faileth. Why sayest thou, O Jacob, and speakest, O Israel, my way is hid from the Lord, and my judgment is passed over from my God? Hast thou not known? Hast thou not heard that the everlasting God, the Lord, the Creator of the ends of the earth, fainteth not, neither is weary? There is no searching of his understanding. He giveth power to the faint, and to them that have no might he increaseth strength. Even the youth shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. We are waiting on the Lord. He is the source of our strength, the source of our wisdom, the source of knowledge and understanding about his ways. And the more we will lift up our eyes on high and behold who hath created these things, the more we will want to learn more about him, to learn more about his works, to observe how he orders creation. He is strong in power. Not one faileth. What he says will be accomplished. Just like with the almond branch, he told Jeremiah he will hasten his word to perform it. The everlasting God, the Lord, the Creator of the ends of the earth, fainteth not, neither is weary. There is no searching of his understanding. But it is incredible to look into his word and to see and understand what is in his word. We are told to look up in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, and we'll see the story of our Creator, the tapestry of our redemption. And when these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. Look up, look up. We are looking for our Redeemer, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, our beloved. And let us love him and serve him first and highest above all else. Maranatha.